Here with Concordia head baseball coach Ryan Dupic to preview the 2018 season, which as we record this is less than a few weeks away from the official start. I know we feel like we've talked quite a bit about the season last year, a great year for the program, but and we talked about kind of the struggles that you went through personally. What were some of the lessons that you learned that you think you'll want to use to maybe talk to about teams down the road that last year's team showed?
Yeah, I think leadership. I think last year's team had great leadership, especially the seniors. They had a clear understanding about what ownership is and what it isn't. And there was a sense of selflessness within that as well. I think that they really made decisions with the interests of the best team, the entire team in mind. And I think, to me, it just really kind of goes to show how important it is to be a family within your program and how important it is to support one another and to have guys who can lead and to have a player-driven and a player-led program. I think was a real big takeaway for me last year.
Well, I know coaches and people in leadership roles often talk about responding to failure, but now this is a 2018 team that's responding to success. What have you noticed about how that process has gone since school has started back in the fall?
It's a great question. I think oftentimes responding to success is actually a lot harder than responding to failure, because I think when we don't do well, it's pretty natural. It's easy right there for us to see that we didn't perform as well as we wanted to. But in this case, I think something that's sort of been in the back of my mind the whole time here is just make sure we don't have a bunch of guys that woke up on second base thinking they hit a double. You know, we're starting over. It's a new season, and we've seen some positives from it, and we've seen some negatives. It's a process we're working through even to this day. We're trying to make sure that we have a heightened sense of awareness, that we're really on the same page, that each individual player understands how to take their game to another level, and what exactly that looks like. I think, especially last season when it was a situation in which maybe I wasn't around so much in coaching, and that really spread Coach Berg thin a little bit. We really had to rely upon those guys to make their own decisions, and I think it becomes easy to simply say, well, if I just do everything that I did last year, it will go exactly the same, and baseball just simply doesn't work like that, and I don't think life really works like that. So I think that's a terrific question. I think we're still trying to create that foundation, that identity. I feel like we have some guys that really have a great grasp of that and are leading well, but we're also a lot younger team, and so I think it's still in the process at this point.
Well, if we look at this team from an offensive standpoint, first of all, you've led some teams the last few years that have scored a good number of runs, and now this lineup's going to look different from what you had last year. How have those dynamics changed, and how will the makeup of this lineup be different?
Yeah, I think as we sit here today, I'm very proud of the offensive group. I think that they've worked very hard. To your point, it certainly is a new group. There will be a lot of young players that are competing for opportunities. There will be some players that have been in our program but have made some nice progress and have developed that will be competing for chances. And you know, we've done about 2 weeks of live at-bats here so far, and I've been very pleased with the offense. They've done some really good things. You know, Coach Berg has been working them hard, and I think they've really accepted that responsibility. We're really trying to work and challenge our guys to not only obviously do some of the basic things offensively, but to be good in other areas as well, in terms of plate discipline and finding the right pitches to hit and things of that nature. And certainly the hit tracks has helped with that as well. So I'm pleased with where they're at. I don't have any doubts that we'll see some really positive things, and that we'll probably have maybe some ebbs and flows as well, but we hope that we can learn from that and continue to improve as the year goes on.
Caleb Geiger is probably the most accomplished among the returning position players. What newcomers have a chance to impact this team at the plate, and what makes you feel good about those particular players?
Yeah, you know, as I kind of think and go around the diamond a little bit, you know, Luciano DePanflis has done a really nice job. He's a freshman from California. He just is beyond he's advanced beyond his years in terms of his habits and the discipline that he brings to the table, the way he's improved himself in every facet since he's been here. And it's just been, we usually say progress isn't linear, there's bumps in the road. I'm sure there's been bumps in the road, but it's been hard to see for him because he's just continued to make progress. He was one of the best players on the field for us in the fall in terms of his production, and I think he's done a really nice job here so far in his live at bat. So I think we'll see him. Dylan Jacob is another freshman from California who's a very big physical kid, who's a terrific young man, and I think he will compete for us and give us a chance to give him a chance to get in there and play. And I also think Keaton Kander is another guy. He's a freshman from Lamar's who was very pleased with the way he performed in the fall. He's a good defender, plays center field really well, and also shows a lot of offensive talent and potential. And so we think that those three guys have a chance to do some really good things. And it's not limited to that. We have another group of guys right below that who I think those three guys have sort of brought themselves to the forefront. I think there's some other guys that are in there that are competing within the mix as well. So, and I'm also, I think in terms of returners with that, I have to mention guys like Thomas Sotzel and Evan Bowman. Some of those guys who maybe didn't play every day for us last year or play much or if at all, but they've really worked hard and made some really good progress.
One of the things you talked about had to happen for this program to elevate to where it got to last year was to bring in some quality arms for the pitching staff, and it was a pretty young staff last year. How do you like the way the progression has gone in that department?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a new year in that last year at this time I don't think we really knew what we had. We were so young and trying to figure out what we were going to be like on the mound. This year I think we feel like we have a little bit better understanding with a year under the belt for so many of those guys, and I think that the talent is most certainly there for us to be able to have a very good pitching staff. I do believe that it's a new season, and so they're going to have to pitch and compete and continue to improve. Things change so much year to year that I can't really take anything for granted. We've seen some good, we've seen some bad so far with our pitching staff, but as we sit here, I feel really comfortable with a group of about 6 guys who I feel like have done a really nice job in Jason Munch and Cade Mooring and Wade Council and Jake Voska and Tanner Wahab and Nick Little, more or less with their experience from a year ago and what they're bringing back. We certainly feel like they're in a position to lead our staff, and now we need those 6 guys to step up and consistently be those types of pitchers for us, and then we're going to need another group of guys to be able to really round out our depth to be able to have the type of staff we want to have.
Look, the culture has changed during your time here, and Riceburg, your assistant, talked about after last season how the seniors on that team were really willing to embrace the freshmen that did make a big impact on the team. And every year is different without that senior class. What steps have been taken to try to continue and cultivate that type of winning culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this year we started a little faster into the fall, and I think one thing that we've really tried to do is we have our systems in place, and we have the things that we do in terms of setting people up with a buddy system and making sure that we're checking in on one another. We've even added on in terms of our culture about we have a more specific set of assessment this year that we try to let the guys know exactly where they stand and how they've done in the 3 areas that we really talk about the most. And so I think we've done probably a better job providing feedback and been a little more consistent with that, whereas last year it was some initial feedback and maybe tailored off a little bit on our part as a coaching staff. We've really tried to return to that because I think it's, again, to your point, it's well said, it's a young group, and so we need clarity there, and we need to have them understanding what we need to do on a consistent basis. And as far as the habits go and things of that nature, I don't think that we're trailing behind by any means. We're just trying to continue to raise the bar and raise that standard as much as we can.
Well, kind of along those lines, I know you've trusted some very recent grads to be assistant coaches for your team, and I know Nick Seaman, another one, got a job at Buena Vista. What does that kind of say about the types of players now that are coming through this program?
Yeah, it's so rewarding. It's very neat to see players choose to go down that path and to have a chance to impact others, and you know, and obviously to have some of those guys back on our staff is so beneficial for our players. It's so beneficial for me. There's things that we can do that I never even really considered doing last year, simply because we just didn't have enough manpower. But you know, Jake Adams and Casey Hall and Mark Harris have all helped out, you know, this season. Devin Bettman, of course, played a huge role last year and still helps from time to time. To see Nick get a full-time job, it's really encouraging, and it's neat too to kind of have that young energy and that passion. I think that helps, you know, me as a coach, and helps when they bring that excitement level, and you know, they maybe don't have as much experience, and in a way that's a good thing, because they ask those questions that maybe sometimes I've kind of moved on from, and it makes you sort of rethink where you're at. So I think it's mutually beneficial, really, for everyone who's involved.
Well, the preseason ratings have come out, and of course you're listed atop the GPAC and receiving votes, which we think is probably the first time that's happened for this program. I know don't want to necessarily put a lot of stock into preseason ratings, but isn't there some satisfaction maybe in just seeing that other people have recognized the improvement on this program?
Yeah, I think it's both. Like you said, from a program perspective, as I sort of step back and look at the big picture, it's very rewarding, especially for the work that the young men prior, you know, who have already graduated, who aren't here anymore. The work that they've put in to place this program in the situation that it is now is certainly a very rewarding thing for them, and it makes me think back to the early teams we had and those players. I think sometimes we maybe lose track of that in general, but I think about that first team and that second team, and obviously last year's team, who have put in so much time and effort. And so from that perspective, it is something to be celebrated. I'm thankful for that. You know, I think within this specific team, you know, barely, if at all, even acknowledge it. This team hasn't done anything to earn that whatsoever, nor have we as a coaching staff with this 2018 season. It's absolutely the byproduct of the work and the effort that the previous teams have put in. And you know, we actually went back. I went back at one point and did a little bit of research on that, and I think the last 9 teams to be picked to win the conference championship, I think only one has won it. 2 of them have actually missed the conference tournament. So statistically, if you get picked, you have a chance to miss the conference tournament more so than you do even win it. Nearly half those teams have finished 6th or worse. So to your point, I think it's both. From a program perspective, large picture, I'm so thankful for the previous players that have come and what they've done for this program. In terms of this season, I sincerely hope that none of those people or any of us coaches is even considering that, really hardly at all, because they haven't done anything to earn that, and that's absolutely a byproduct of what happened last season.
Sure. Well, from your perspective, some of your biggest, I guess, struggles from a health perspective were right in the middle of the season last year. What would you want to share with people about how much different 2018 will be, and how significant it is for you to just be able to spend more time with your players as you're getting ready for a season? Yeah, I get to be around so much more, and I'm still trying to figure out if the guys like that or not. But you know, yeah, it's fun to be able to be there in more of the day-to-day operational stuff this year. You know, last season, obviously not having a chance to be around as consistently, especially practice stuff from day to day. But you know, this year I feel well, and I've gotten some good feedback in terms of the checkups that I've had, so things are going well at this point. I've gained some weight, and being able to eat again, at least better than I have in the past, is much improved. And so I'm able to be with the guys more consistently, which is a big part of this. You know, developing the relationships with the guys and just enjoying that day to day is what I really like about this. So it's fun. It feels normal now. It feels like it's back to normal, and that part is certainly something to be celebrated. The last thing, I know you and Coach Berg do some off-season number crunching and projecting. If you can share, what have some of those exercises told you about where your team is at?
Yeah, you know, it's probably the most interesting year since I've been here at Concordia, just because from that perspective, because so many teams graduated so many good players, you know, and we certainly weren't immune to that. And you look at the three teams the two other teams that finished near the top of the league last year, Midland and Morningside, both graduated so many players that, you know, projections are kind of nice when you know who's coming back, but when you don't, it's kind of hard. And I think there's a big gap this year with that. So I look at the league this year and I truly say I think it is so wide open. I don't think you're going to have one team that's just going to go dominate and win by 3, 4, 5 games. I think there's teams like us and Midland and Morningside who are picked near the top, but have plenty of questions that we're trying to figure out. At least I can speak for us that we are. I think there's teams in the middle of the pack like Hastings and Mount Marty who had really nice finishes to last year, but also lost a decent amount of players. And then I think there's teams like Northwestern and Doane who, if you just looked at the standings from last season, you would say that they were behind, but I expect them to be very competitive. I think they'll have huge jumps this year within the conference. So it's really hard. It was probably the least amount of information we took from all that number crunching this year, but we've tried to do that more this year, just in terms of our players and our team and understanding what that means and how we need to train our guys and see if it works out.